a country gets to make its own decisions, but that's not in practice happening anywhere. What's the real purpose of them? I sense that social justice is not actually the goal.
So recently, Tucker Carlson exposed why democracy isn't delivering upon expectations, not only in the world in general, but also in the United States, and how demographics and political dynamics figure into this, and what is the natural result of this. This is in the context of a conversation with Christopher Caldwell, so let's get his take. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
It just seems like the spread between what people want and what they're getting grows wider every year. People seem to hate mass migration everywhere in the world. I don't think there's a single person who likes mass migration, really. And you can tell by their behavior. Yeah. Certainly true in this country. I think people have an expectation of sovereignty, which almost no country has. Like, a country gets to make its own decisions, but that's not in practice happening anywhere, with only, again, a few exceptions. And so there's so much frustration about that I'm wondering, what's the point where it bubbles up into something unmanageable?
Well, a couple of things. I'm not sure that I think that the gap between what people want and what they're getting is wide, but I'm not sure that it's widening. I mean, the election of Trump was certainly a call for more action against mass migration.
Yes.
And since he's been elected, the border has been pretty much closed. There have been deportations. There have been, certainly the rhetorical stance of the administration is against migration. I mean, Trump may disappoint his voters on other things, but on that one thing, which I think we agree is like a really central issue, actually the will of the people and the actions of the government have kind of converged.
I agree with that.
All right, so on that, there hasn't been any mass deportations, though, and that's something, a lot of conservatives have clamored about. And the deportations that have happened are selective. They are applying to people that happen to be critics of Israel. That is what's going on. There is a lot of evidence to suggest that the border is more sealed right now, but it seems to not be driven by necessarily a change in policy, but more of a psychological phenomenon that because Trump's in office, people are less likely to risk their lives to try to come to the United States, bring their wealth and family to do it. And for that, I mean, if you're on the side of stringent, rigid, closed borders, I guess that's something to celebrate. But this is also why conservatism is progressivism driving the speed limit, as Michael Malice says, is that there's been no serious attempt to deploy mass deportations for any of the 40 million people that are here illegally. Numbers in that respect differ somewhere between 30 to 40, and that hasn't happened at all. So I don't know that Trump has delivered on that, even to his base. Not that we thought he would try to do that, but that's the truth.
If there were to be, as I've just described, a conservative government in England, and it abolished the Human Rights Act, which would allow Britain to act in a fully sovereign way, then the way would be wide open to deporting people who did not have the right to be there, and certainly to stopping the ongoing traffic of small boat migration in England. So I think I think it's possible things are getting better from a democratic point of view. You also said, okay, so at what point does this explode? I'm not sure it does, because one of the things that makes things explode is discontent in numerous and dynamic classes. Of course, you have freedom of speech, but if you say that in the company you own, you will create a hostile environment for your employees.
Yeah, you get called a hate speech purveyor if you do things like that. As far as democracy, I think it's failed in terms of the classic conception of that in several ways. Democracy in my mind is two wolves and a sheep, voting on what's for dinner. It is mob rule. It's the application of majoritarian rule to pervert the rights of the minority in many respects. We see that in government. But as it pertains to our elections, politicians, Trump included, get elected on promises that they don't even, attempt to fulfill. They don't even pretend to fulfill. Some examples when it came to Trump is ending the war in Ukraine day one. He says it's so hard. He, talks about sanctions and threats toward Russia that have already been deployed time and time again under the Biden administration, when he could have just disengaged day one. Same thing with Doge cuts. If you really wanted to cut spending in government, extravagant waste, they could have done it. They did not codify any results in terms of Doge. I think there were like $9 billion codified into law, and that was easily offset by the new Trump spending, including the big abominable bill, the Biden CR that they whipped Republicans to extend. And, these projections of $2 trillion in Doge cuts were, just way beyond what they were willing to do. So we see that play out time and time again. That's how these politicians get elected. They discard all their good promises.
And therefore, they'll be able to sue you for this much money. So basically, without banning speech, you were able to make speech very uncomfortable for people.
Did that just play out? Is it just impossible for people to live this way forever and people just decide?
No, it didn't play out. It had to be rebelled against. And the removal, the lifting of the executive orders that order affirmative action by Trump was an absolutely necessary step. The decision not to enforce affirmative action was a necessary step. By the way, it was preceded by a Supreme Court case that appeared in its mealy-mouthed way to say negative things about affirmative action programs in universities, but it's clear that universities were proceeding.
Well, what about safe spaces for Jewish Americans? It sure seems like much of the right seems to embrace that same sort of mentality, the affirmative action mentality, when it comes to special carve-outs for Israel and people that they say are at threat over, threats toward Jewish students, which there's already plenty of laws against harassment, murder, theft, larceny, obstruction, all sorts of crimes that would apply to all people equally. But this administration seems very willing for special DEI carve-outs for Jewish Americans. There's been several states to rewrite their codes to try to penalize speech that would be dangerous toward Israel, or even some interpretations of Christianity to conflate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism in places like Georgia and Arizona. We are seeing this play out. This administration is big fans of that kind of mentality, and we're just supposed to believe that there's no similarities here and free speech has been restored. And, they're right. A lot of the free speech violations did come up as part of the Twitter files, censorship on the internet, this woke mentality on the liberal side, but, it's being redeployed just with a right-wing flavor.
Were proceeding as best they could to maintain it. So, no, it does not play out. It's this affirmative action, political correctness, woke, this whole constellation of authoritarian and even totalitarian seeming rules. They are rules. They are not part of the culture. They are not the result of, a lot of people deciding we really ought to be nicer to trans people.
Yeah, that's the truth. But the same thing when it comes out for safe spaces for Jewish Americans on college campuses. The same thing. No one voted for that. Democracy only rules to the extent that the ruling class wants it to rule. When the people vote in favor of something that happens to coincide with the aspirations of the ruling class, the other things just get discarded.
They are enforced by the fact that if you fall afoul of these of civil rights laws, it can cost you your business and your reputation and everything else.
What's the real purpose of them? I sense that social justice is not actually the goal.
Well, I should add that this is just let's deal with this. I think that solving the age-old race problem in the United States was the original goal of civil rights.
Yes.
But the tools that were given to solve that problem included ways to overturn democratically made decisions in the South. That tool, that ability to circumvent a democratic mandate from the American people, from any people, is such a valuable thing for politicians to have. And so they started using it for everything. As I say,
this is the ascension of the federal judiciary when you get 5 people on a bench of 9 people, they're politically connected lawyers, just override the will of localities. That is what the modern Supreme Court is. The founders didn't have that in their designs and in their minds when it came to Article 3 of the Constitution. That body was supposed to adjudicate a few certain defined types of cases, but instead it's become a superlative oligarchy, not just in one sort of case or another, but in American jurisprudence in general. It does override, what people think they have in terms of democracy. If you're looking at that term glowingly, I don't, because I believe it perverts rights most of the time. But at the same time, you're bringing this body that's supposed to be the federal judiciary and building it into an oligarchy.
Underrepresentation of women, underrepresentation of immigrants, underrepresentation of Hispanics, all these things become crises. And social justice actually was the name that was given to this. But it was always, and you can call it anything you want, but it always was a way of using the government to sort of order society. And the danger of it was that you could do that at a really, really micro level. You can do it at the level of like what signs people hang in the doors of their shops, and so it became kind of like the world that, Václav Havel describes in his, and that's why everyone started reading Václav Havel and Alexander Solzhenitsyn again, because our society felt like those Eastern European societies at the time of
it was Soviet. It was totalitarian. Yeah. I mean, in the strict sense, it was
that's right.
Total control over people's lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is strict centralization of government and the natural result that plays out. What makes you think that you're going to be able to retain more influence and power locally in your community, in your state level, when the Washington government has grown to be a superlative entity? Of course you're being forced, to adhere to these strict regulatory codes, including signs. And, the solution to that isn't just vote in a guy that sounds good on these issues and might be better next time. It's to subdue the power of the central government by using nullification efforts locally to resist the immoral and unconstitutional laws and edicts of the central state. That's what the American founders did in 1765 during the Stamp Act. That was the response to the coercive acts. The colonists called them intolerable acts in the 1770s. That's what needs to be part of the formula now. It's not sending a better guy to Washington.
I like to draw the distinction that Hannah Arendt does at one point. A lot of people use totalitarianism to mean like a really, Mussolini originally used it to mean, like the state can be all competent. And a lot of people in our time use it to mean like a really, really, really bad dictatorship. But the way Hannah Arendt uses it means like the state gets into the totality of your
exactly
of your life.
It doesn't have to be violent.
There's no nook of your life that where the state does not belong. The state wants to be at your dinner table. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, we know what you mean for sure.
and listening in on you. The state wants to be, on your route to work and make sure, the state wants to be everywhere with you in everything you do.
Can we go back to that? So you said that this was not organic. The population never cried out for total control of its personal conversations or anything else.
Yeah, that was part of the NSA PRISM program that Snowden revealed. The heroic whistleblower that deserves medals. And now you have Palantir aspiring to conjoin the information that the NSA gathers with information that other federal agencies gather, and we're supposed to be quiet about that. A complete violation of the Fourth Amendment. That's true. This wasn't voted on. And in fact, James Clapper denied that this was even happening in sworn testimony. Did he get arraigned for that? Did he get indicted or charged? No. He became a CNN analyst. He is considered a hero. He will also not be convicted or even charged with any crimes related to Russiagate, too, which he played a role in.
It was imposed on the population by the state. Now it's been rolled back by the state,
right,
run by Donald Trump. But
hasn't been rolled back.
Can it be reimposed? Would people could President Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez be like, my goal as president is going to be to eliminate racism? Wouldn't people just laugh at her?
Yeah, people would certainly laugh at her because eliminating racism has, happened more because of cultural trends, not political edicts and political laws and political regulations. And I think there was something that he said earlier in this that was important, that the civil rights era started as a legitimate pushback against nefarious forces that prohibited people from getting the same rights as other people, notably blacks, but also that pertained to all sorts of other Americans at various points in history. But in terms of the 1950s and 1960s, certainly blacks. But instead of that issue being resolved over time gradually, which to some extent it was, despite, the controversy of certain things like this held for the elimination of discrimination in the workplace. You couldn't discriminate based on these certain arbitrary criteria, but, it leaves out other arbitrary criteria you can discriminate on the basis of. And let's not pretend everyone engages in discrimination. I don't allow drunkards and vagabonds into my house. That's the simplest form of discrimination. But that should be allowed, as a matter of individual rights to be able to discriminate in any regard that you want, in my mind. But that wasn't voted for. And what you have now is the government forcing down the throats of Americans these ideas that will divide and conquer. The race war, the sex war, things regarding protections for Jewish Americans. This is designed to divide the people against themselves while the government enacts more welfare, expands the welfare state, gets into more wars, plunges the country further into debt when we're $37 trillion into debt, prints more money through the central bank to finance it, and we're just supposed to believe it's all organic. I don't believe it's organic. I think if you look at, if you do LexisNexis searches for certain terms that were prevalent in the 2010s, in the mid 2010s, when the Tea Party and the Occupy movement were in some regard having the same Venn diagram being shared, the regime really cracked down on this by, injecting race war, sex war, trans issues, war on women, racism, white nationalism, injecting all of that into the political zeitgeist to distract us while they continue to enact the same policies. That's where I think we are. Democracy has played a role in it. The re-election rates of senators and congressmen are off the charts, despite the fact that the people aren't generally getting what they proclaim to want. They have negative approval ratings for these people, but still end up generally biting the bullet and supporting them. That is a problem in America, and it's not going to be solved through the electoral process. It's going to take a mass awakening of the people in the same way that there was a mass awakening of the people in the 1760s and 1770s in the United States, thanks to patriots like Samuel Adams and James Otis and Thomas Paine. All these people that brought those issues down to be digestible to the layman. But that's where we're at. Let me know down below, do you agree with Tucker Carlson? Is democracy delivering on expectations, or is just they're an oligarchy perverting those expectations no matter what? Let me know in the comments down below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, also subscribe to Tucker. Thanks for this interview. And please consider becoming a YouTube member. If you click the join button below, you can help support the channel, and in return, I'll give you access to all my videos before they go live on YouTube. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.